What does this moment mean to you, especially considering where you're from?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very surreal moment. I don't think, coming into the game, you ever have an idea of how it's going to end. I think you do your best to, do what your abilities allow. And I think the fact that it ended in a way that I thought was very nice, and then this is like another kind of added element that I didn't foresee, and so it's still, I don't think it's really hit me yet. I think when I see other people who have been in the Ring of Honor, Marty Lyons, Wayne Corbett, Nick Mangold, it's like, I get it. Revis, I get it. Like, these guys are phenomenal players. In their time, they arguably the best. I think it's hard to look at yourself in that light. I was joking the other day. All I remember is my coaches telling me to do things better, right? Like, that's not good enough. I remember the times I'm picking up, Chad Pennington. It's like, yeah, sack on first play. Like, I remember these things a lot more than I remember maybe the moments that just coalesce so today could happen. So I think for me, it's like, having time to remove yourself from that moment so you can really reflect and say, like, okay, yeah, maybe the work did pay off, or maybe, the things that I just thought were so dire were just a part of the process.
What do you think the emotion is going to be like for you on Sunday?
Hopefully I'll be able to say what I have, envisioned to say, but I'm sure it's going to be emotionally filled, to have family, friends, teammates, the fans. I think it's probably going to be a challenge to really say and express how I feel. I think my emotions will be visible, because I don't know how many times you walk in an environment like that. To me, it feels very much like a draft day scenario where you're walking into a scenario where you're like, I couldn't imagine this, right? I couldn't picture this. I've seen people go through this, but for this to be me, it's like, so the fact that it's happening again is kind of surreal.
How many of your family members are going to be in attendance?
Well, you got two here, and a lot of my family and close friends will support. It's funny. I have, I think, about 5 friends that I brought to the draft with me. They came to the retirement, and then they're going to come on Sunday as well. So it's almost like, you get to see it when it started, and also when it ended. So I'm appreciative of that.
Britt, what does it mean to you to be going the same year as Nick and Darrell, who you spent so many years with?
I think it's huge. I think sometimes it makes sense, like, why we might have had the success we've had, because we were able to do it together. I think when you think of Nick Mangold and all the accolades that he's done and how he's anchored the line, he was a big part of my success. I think of Revis and how feared he was. People wouldn't throw to his side, and when they did, they got penalized every single time. And it's like, that helps your offense. It allows people to not score points, or you get points on defense, and it adds to whatever we're doing. And so I think that, the fact that we can go in together just speaks volume of the fact of how well we were able to play collectively. And I think that's another thing that I think of often.
Is there a moment that stands out to you more than another during your tenure here?
Just the fights. I mean, I think of all the sideline fights with I had with, like, Willie and whatnot versus the Patriots. So I think that's a surreal moment that we get to do this today on Sunday. But again, a lot of, and I'm sure this is true for a lot of my peers, I think we fixate on the small things that didn't necessarily go according to plan. Key moments that might have turned the game had we done things a little differently. And so I think it's not always automatic to just look at the things that you do well. Even now, I can think of many of the coaching points that I've had throughout my whole career, whether it be at high school, college, or in the NFL, that I'm like, man, I could still work on those today and probably never get it to where I think would be acceptable to me. But again, I think sometimes it's good to step out of yourself, and just because you feel a certain way, that's not always the reality of your situation. And I'm thankful for that. So,
the team hasn't made the playoffs in a decade. What do you think of what this current team is doing right now?
I think we're doing great. I think, whatever you can do towards your goals is always positive. I think, we're still early in the season, And the most important game that we could focus on is the next one, and that's the Patriots. So it's great to have aspirations, but again, it's one step at a time, one game at a time.
Rick, all the things you accomplished, maybe the most amazing is just your durability and how you never missed a practice, never missed a game. And since you've been gone, I don't know if there's been a lot of left tackles here. What do you chalk that up to? Just your ability to just get out there every week and every day?
I mean, I just count it a blessing. I mean, I don't know that I did anything different than, my peers, my teammates. I try to just show up. They say that's, 80% of the battle is just, being there. So I just tried to be in the room, try to listen to what the coaches were. I had some phenomenal coaches, strength coaches, position coaches. And so I think, that allows you to be in the right position, that allows you to be physically capable to execute your assignments. But I just counted a blessing. I don't know why I was able to do it. It's nothing I ever thought about. It was never anything that I was like, oh, yeah, I got to make sure that I don't mess up any streaks. That wasn't even a concern of mine. It was just like I have other things to focus on. So the fact that that's something that we can even acknowledge is surprising. Even in my last couple years, they always try to figure out new ways to position players and highlight certain things. And, there was a thought that maybe I'd do some, heavy or tight end type stuff. And that would have changed some of the scenarios that we have here today, but it didn't happen. So I don't know. It wasn't anything that I was advocating for. So I kind of, leave that to, what it is.
What attracted you to football in the first place as a little kid, and where did you first play organized football?
I would say I probably played in 7th, 8th grade. Football was kind of like a refuge. I had open heart surgery when I was 8 or 9 years old, and I was trying to find a sport that would allow me to feel less handicapped. I did martial arts, and it seemed as though when we would spar, I would have extra protection that I think started to eat away at my confidence a little bit. So I was looking for a way to, find something that I thought was tough enough to validate who I was and to just prove that I can do that. So football, it wasn't because I was this big fan or I had a player that I aspired to be like. It was kind of like, hey, what can I do in order to prove this to myself that I'm capable of being tough or,
And the first team you played for was a school team?
Absolutely. It was Freeport. I think it was the JV team. So Freeport just happened to be a phenomenal football school.
That's where I'm from today.
Well, that's where I'm from.
Absolutely.
Russ Seller is a Hall of Fame coach.
He says hello, by the way.
So it's like, sometimes things are designed outside of your, there's a bigger plan at play, For me to be in that school or for me to have the type of doctors that I had that were willing to allow me to play after my surgery, things have to fall in line sometimes, so it's bigger than my individual efforts that allowed me to have success. It's broader than that. I think there's a grander scheme at play.
I just have one quick follow-up. Freeport 20, Comeg 19 in overtime. Do you have good recall of the Long Island Championship?
I don't have good recall. I think I remember Eddie Gordon sacking the quarterback on the last play. He just blitzed. But like I said, Freeport was always a great environment. We've always had a lot of success. It was almost like we built that tradition. And so, even though we didn't know that we would win that game, we definitely had every reason or we were prepared to have that outcome, So my teammates, they were phenomenal then. The coaches were phenomenal. And I think it allows us to have these conversations even today.
Your level of involvement of the Jets organization now, and just how often do you keep up with what's going on?
I'd say about a couple of years ago I was interning. I interned in the scouting department. I interned during the season for strength and conditioning. And so, I've always been curious about the different areas of the organization. I've written for the organization. I had a signature series, a blog for a couple seasons that I did. And so not only as somebody who was a player, I was very much interested in just how everything worked. And I think during retirement or my time away from the game, you explore a lot, trying to figure out what would be the next step or what are things that potentially I could get into. And even though eventually it didn't come back to this place, I mean, I've learned a lot, and I'm more of a distant fan. You know, I don't necessarily watch every game. But I've attended games throughout the years, and it's been a joy to see the team do well. It's been a joy to see different players shine, and I just appreciate, you know, the opportunity to just be, you know, a member of this alumni.
Rick, you went through, you had the spotlight on you where you were drafted, right, number 4 overall, and early on, remember people questioning whether you were big enough to play left tackle, all this stuff. That happens now to all these draft picks. What kind of advice would you give to these guys? This team's very young, and some of them are coming under that kind of scrutiny. What advice would you give to them?
I guess some of the advice that I'd gotten, you know, I think my offensive line coach at UVA would always say, you know, if you listen to the good things, you're obligated to listen to the bad things. So you either read it all or you don't read any of it. And so I think some of it can be very informative, like, hey, how do I improve? How do I get better? But sometimes it can be a distraction, right? It can be something that can, you know, negatively impact how you feel about yourself and kind of have a spiraling. So I'm not a big advocate of, you know, really going into and looking at comments and whatnot about your performance. I would listen to your coaches. I would listen to people who are more closer to you that understand how it's done, and just focus on that. You can only do your best, right? You can only control what you can control. As we've talked about even today, there's situations that were put in place that allowed me to have a lot of success outside of me just showing up and trying to do my best. So. Again, I think sometimes, you know, we can get caught up in trying to serve too many people at once and just bring it back to the basics of just, all right, what do I need to do to get better, and let me just focus on that.
Do you know Dwayne Brown well, Rick?
Yeah, I mean, I know him. I talked to him several times. I mean, I think he came out a year after me, so
Virginia Tech.
yeah, it's interesting to see the careers of you know, your peers and how things work out, but it's always is great. You know, I like the fact that there's, you know, guys who I've played with who are continuing to play the game, you know, at a high level.
You said that you don't watch every game, but have you noticed the success Geno Smith has had in Seattle? Do you have any thoughts on what he is?
You know, I'm happy to see that he's having success. You know, I think I'm always happy to see guys have success in this league, whether they're on our team or not. And so I think it's great to, you know, applaud those efforts.